Life with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Buckchester. You know what I like to do. I want to inspire, enlighten, and empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today we want to get you fired up about the road to prosperity. Now, there's a little bit of a twist because prosperity isn't always what you think it is. It can be so much more. And that's what I'm going to talk about with my guest today, author Jerry Lane. Now, you know what I'm going to tell you. Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee, get your tea, because we are about to get started. So if you would, please go on and hand Jerry a mic because I want to talk about the road to prosperity. Good morning, Jerry. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Good morning, Dr. Angela. How are you today?
I am well. Thanks so much for spending some time with me today. Now, before we get started, I want to ask the question, and sometimes, I just don't want to read a bio. I really, really don't. So no offense to your bio. I want to ask you to tell me in your own words, who is Jerry Lane?
Who is Jerry Lane? I am one of 11 children from the late Ella and Abraham Lane, born and raised on a small rural farm in southwest Georgia. However, after graduating from high school, I went into the military. And it was because of this military upbringing, my home upbringing and my military training, I ended up being in a position where I had a structured lifestyle. And because of that, after retiring from the military, I went on to seminary at Erskine Theological Seminary, and there was blessed to have a real strong theological education. And after graduation, I went into mainstream ministry, and I stayed there for several years. And then I was blessed to be able to connect with a foundation, Shona We Care Foundation. Through this foundation, I was able to begin to do real rubber meet the road type of ministry. And there I am enjoying some of the best days of my life. And through this year, and through what I'm doing now, I will tell you, the road to prosperity was really birthed out of the totality of who I am. It's just something about where I'm currently living along the Palmetto Trail from Pomaria, South Carolina to Prosperity, South Carolina. That's a Palmetto Trail that goes right by my property. And since it goes right by my property, I had lived here for quite some time. But then all of a sudden, I decided that I should go out and see what really was on this trail. And so as me and my friend, we ventured out on this trail, we were able to see something so unique and wonderful. And matter of fact, for me, that was an opening up. And I knew back then that God was showing me something. God wanted me to do something. So he opened me up to this trail. And along this trail from Pomaria, heading to prosperity, God began to show me something beyond my imagination. I began to look at how beautiful the trail was and how it was lined and the beauty that around each bend, how it talked to me and began to speak to me. I was able to see along the trail trees that had all kinds of shapes and sizes. And yes, I was able to see at one point where a bird was nested just right before me on a twig. And then when I got to the twig, it was as though the bird invited me to come on and to nest with it. Of course, some of it's pretty much my imagination at that point. But nonetheless, I was able, it's God speaking to me. It was just like on this day, all nature wanted to speak to me and share with me. And really this began this unique style of writing and this unique venture of what God wanted to do through me. Because through this here, I began to do more adventure trips, and I found out that, this book is not about power, not prestige, not money, But what it's about, it is about getting out and allowing one to connect or reconnect with God's created order and allowing it to bring about the healing and wholeness which we are seeking. And through it, I'm able to enjoy the road to prosperity.
I love it. I love it. Let me tell you, it is amazing when God chooses to speak to us through nature. I used to think that when I was a younger person that the older people were just putting a lot on that conversation when they would say, oh, the bird songs were so beautiful today, or, you know, the air was just so fresh and clean. And I'm thinking, wow, you got a lot out of that. I don't see it the same way, but okay, sure. You know, if it's special to you, then I'm happy. But I found that as I get older, you really do start to see things differently. And boy, does God really add his own heartbeat and rhythm and song to nature, and we really and truly are able to see that. So I love that you added that touch. Now, let me ask you about the title. Now, there's a little bit of the obvious with the location, but why did you decide to entitle your book The Road to Prosperity?
Yes, I have already covered most of it when I mentioned the location. And actually, when you look at it, I live along the Palmetto Trail. By the way, the Palmetto Trail begins or ends in Seneca, South Carolina, and then goes all the way down to Beaufort, South Carolina, and it passed right by my home, my property line. At any rate, but if you're heading from the south to the north, it goes right through the little town of Pomaria, South Carolina. But even after going out there, and I begin to look at it, if you notice the front cover, there's a little girl that's on the front. That is my granddaughter. At the time that she was only 4 years old, yes. And she's holding this staff in her hand. This is the staff that you pretty much would see me anytime that I'm out venturing. I have this staff. So this particular day, I decided to let her hold this. And as she was holding it, I decided to take a picture of it, so I took a picture of it. But if you notice down to the bottom of it, there's another picture. That's a picture of me with my back turned to the road, and also my wonderful security, my secret security. I mentioned him. His name is Boo. So he's my fur companion. But at any rate, what happened is that you can see that in front of us there's another road, and actually that's Coontressor Road. But yet, when you look at the title of it, and you look at my granddaughter, she's heading in one direction, and we are heading in a totally different direction. And that's the way life is. We are all heading in different directions, but each route that we take, and we listen to what God is speaking to and how God is speaking to us, then we'll know that we are on the right road to the prosperity that we are seeking. And this is how the book came about. I love
that analogy. Now, a little side note, I am a fur baby mama, so I do understand what it is like to have your fur babies, your fur companions with you, and they are definitely an added bonus to our lives, I tell you, and especially if you have a dog. I tell you, a dog has such a kind and gentle heart. They are special to us. They are. But, you know, you make a really great point there when you look at the cover of the book. Sometimes we are traveling north or south or east or west, but sometimes God wants us to turn around or make a sharp left or a sharp right. And, boy, if we only just follow that direction. Sometimes we're alone. Sometimes we have a companion. I see a lot in that cover there, and I definitely understand what you're getting at. I love that. Now, for so many people, they have a journey when it comes to writing a book. From start to finish, they don't have necessarily any expectation. They're simply going to go where it leads. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey in getting your book published?
Well, I mentioned earlier that the book was birthed out of in my book. I talked about my home upbringing, and then I talked about the military experience. But, and because and I talked about how it provides structure in my life. And so generally around about the October time frame, I'm already looking at how I'm going to close out the rest of the year, but also what I'm going to do the next year. And then, of course, moving forward from there. But at any rate, on this particular day, around that portion of the season, I was having this conversation with God. And I made mention to God. I said, God, next year I would like to do something different. And the voice spoke to me and said, okay, something different like what? And then, of course, that was some other things that I was making mention of, but in particular, this piece I want to get across. And I said, like write a book. And the voice ceased. And the conversation stopped. And I went to bed that night. It was something about that night's sleep. It appears that that night I got the best sleep that I ever had in my whole life. But the next morning, as I awakened, I woke up, next thing I know, I was grabbing my cell phone, I was grabbing my iPad, and my fingers were working, and next thing I know, here it is, all those things that God wanted me to remember. It was fresh in my mind, and I just couldn't stop. I just typing. And then and that's what really created and started the motivation of writing this book and so forth. And it just continued. And that's where I'm at.
I was going to say, I love it when God does that. I definitely understand the downloads, as I call them, that he gives to us. And we know that it's such an awesome download, or that God-given moment, or that God moment, because it just flows from you. You just know. It's like you said, you got this wonderful rest, so you weren't physically fatigued or tired or drained or anything, and boy, did it just come out. I think it's awesome, and people need to know that those things do happen, and it's not just them, that it is okay, and that they should run with it. I love it. Now, we have about 2 minutes left in this part of the show, but I do want to ask you, what has been one of your biggest accomplishments in your career so far? You've done so much, but what are maybe one or two of your biggest accomplishments?
Of course, education is always one of the things that are so near and dear, because I come from a line of educators, a lot of teachers and so forth, and so in my family, I'm fortunate to be able to have my master's of divinity. And I thank God for it, for God sent. And, of course, that's one of the things that's continued to inspire my family. I have one daughter, and, of course, she has 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl. As a matter of fact, the little girl is the one that's on the front cover, my granddaughter.
Oh, wow.
Yes. But at any rate, so within the book, family is so important to me. That's the piece. And because of that, that is instilled in my family, why it's so important to go and get a good education, regardless of where you were raised, how you were raised and everything. But the education is something that you can get that will be yours. And it's up to you to do what you want to do with it once you get it. But in any piece, that has really been a great accomplishment, because after all, I believe in my immediate family, I was the first of 11 children to be able to get the master's degree. And so I'm thankful for that as well. So it's a huge example for my family. Another thing is that in my immediate family, I was the first one to go into the military. And so by going into the military, I was fortunate to stay 21 years and 21 days and retire in the military as a senior non-commissioned officer. And so that was major for me as well. But the most important piece with that is to take advantage of all the benefits, and use those benefits in order to make life better for myself and better for my family. I also want to recognize that another piece of this was, of course, meeting and marrying my late wife of 26 years. Of course, she unfortunately, she couldn't succumb to illness, and but yet, her memory continued to impact my life, and of course the life of my daughter, my grands as well. So we are thankful for that. But when I look at it, the most two successful things for me right now are educational and family, and the things that we do with family, for family.
You have definitely said a mouthful there, and yes, our education is not to be taken for granted, because even in our current climate, we are still hearing about people that say, I am the first person in my family to go to college, and we're just talking about a bachelor's degree, or even sometimes an associate's degree. So we cannot take that education for granted. You said that. And I love family. I'm so big on family. It is one of the things that really motivates me and keeps me going. And thank you for mentioning your deceased wife as well, because I'm sure listeners, there's someone that you can think of that may not be here with us physically anymore that has made a world of difference in your life. So, yeah, you really touched on some important parts there, and thank you for reminding us. Now, Jerry, it's time for us to go to break, but before we do, I would like for you, if you would please, can you remind everyone, what is the title of your book, where can we get a copy, and how do we stay in contact with you?
Yes, the title of the book is The Road to Prosperity. And, of course, the publisher of the book is Exlibris. And, of course, you can reach Exlibris at exlibris.com. However, if you'd like to get a copy of the book, you can always go to Amazon. And, of course, Amazon is on demand. And you also there, because I am also part of the 100% book return, 100% guaranteed, of course, some of the bookstores do carry the book. So you should be able to go to some of the Amazon stores or some of the local stores, and particularly in the South Carolina area. And you should be able to purchase the book. But if not, then of course you can purchase it through Amazon on demand.
Gotcha. Alrighty, listeners, now you know where you can pick up a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this.
Being with Infants by Montessori teacher trainer and world-renowned child specialist Beverly Kovach is finally on DVD and digital download. The long-awaited 3D disc set is essential for any new parent, grandparent, or infant caregiver wanting respectful relationships with infants and their care. Being with Infants is broken down into 20 easy-to-digest video lessons, complete with demonstrations. Everything from diapering, feeding, the proper way of picking up infants, sleep, crying, environment, play, weaning, and much more are covered. Being with Infants is available on DVD and digital download at Walmart, Target, Barnes & Noble, and Amazon. Order today and be sure to follow Being with Infants on Facebook for free bonus content.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for our Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butch-Chester, and my guest today is author Jerry Lane, and we are talking about his book, The Road to Prosperity. And I love how he reminds us that prosperity isn't always just a destination that's far off, but it can be something that is right here, right now. And it doesn't always include just finances, but it is love, it is family, it is hope, it is time with God, it is so many things. And I really, really love that he reminds us of that. So, Jerry, I want to ask you, what do you think your unique skills may be that helped you become successful, or that helped you become someone who's in tune with your prosperity, if you will?
When I think about my training and leadership positions and the various positions that I held, and how I worked in procurement and in various positions during my military career. And one of the things is that I'm always putting something together for someone, and also turning around at the creating a product, turning around and selling a product for someone. So one of the things that I see myself as taking that experience and using that experience in order to promote something that's near and dear to me. Because when I think about this book, The Road to Prosperity, it's something that God, has brought from within me. And so it has, even though it's God sent, it still has my ownership in making sure that I do my job and get it out so that the readers would have this information. Perhaps, someone is going through some type of challenge in their life, and they need to be inspired. And hopefully that because of this, I'm getting this book out to those types of readers so that they would have something to motivate them, as they go through life. And also, it's also empowering. And to be frank with you, I pulled the book out this morning, just taking a quick glance at it, because it was something about this book when I was reading it this morning that it began to bring tears to my eyes because it took on a total different meaning. But through it, there was a sudden burst of energy. And to be frank with this, I got out this morning, I was in the yard and just thinking about, this interview with you, Dr. Angela, and just like my energy level just went up, and just like I was just overpowered with a sudden burst of energy, and I had to use it by just putting a grass and doing some decoration in my flower garden and so forth. But at any rate, when I look at this, what this book does for me, I'm sure that it's going to do the same thing for others to empower them as well and inspire them to do something unique and wonderful. Yes.
And isn't that what it's all about? It's so interesting. With all of the authors that I talked to, I think the one thing that we all agree on is that we're sharing our story, or we're sharing this particular story because we want for it to inspire somebody or empower them, or just kind of motivate them to continue to be the best that they can be, to go on and step out in faith and do that thing that God has called them to do. And I know that when I talk about someone being called to do something, it's not always to ministry. It's not always, to preach in the pulpit, but sometimes you've been called to be a nurse, or you've been called to be an encourager because that's just your personality, or you've been called to be a mom, or whatever it is. That we all have this task that God has given to us to do. So thank you for kind of, firing yourself up and getting yourself motivated to come on, because you can feel that when you talk to the audience. I love it. Now, we have these journeys that we go on just as human beings from day to day, moment to moment, and we can look back over our lives and see that we have accomplished some things. We are in the middle of accomplishing others, and there are some other things that we may have even forgotten about. So when you talk about your journey to prosperity, how have you been able to review this journey that you have been on?
One of the things that I do quite often is to revisit a lot of the places that I write about. And by the way, most of the things, except for my home bringing, really are they are written along this Palmetto Trail, and so I go and I revisit quite often. Now, here's what really brings it together. One of the groups that in the local area, and actually I get a name in Newberry, they're county literacy council. They have a big book reading club. But anyway, they reached out to me, and of course, and they asked me if I could come and have an interview with them, and I did. And so through this, they were able to call me again because they were taking a trip, and they invited me to meet them along the Palmetto Trail, and they wanted to visit the location where the book was written, of course, my home, and some of the things that they noticed in the book. They want to talk about those and see those things. But anyway, so we coordinated that, and of course, we went to the location, and of course, we began to talk about it, and of course, they began to share their thoughts and ideas about a lot of things. So, and then after we finished that location, then someone said, hey, we got to go about it. Even though someone did a time hike, It's, oh, you know what? We got to be at another location at a certain time, but we got to go by his home, his property. So, of course, we came here, and this is what it was about. They got out, and it's just like they all had a different thing in mind. It's around about 15 of them. They had different things in mind that they wanted to talk about, and they used to talk about. Then above all the voices that would once say, hey, isn't that the corral that was written about in your book? And, of course, I said yes. And so we went over to the corral, and I began to talk to them about, all the activity about how the lake rocks are on the floor of the corral. And, of course, that is something taken out the page of J.J. Watt, for those that like NFL football, and, of course, his training style. And then, of course, with the big tires and how we use the sledgehammer to hit them in the weights and all the other things, activity that we do, and workout techniques that my grandson used in order to be able to help them be better, athletes and football players, and also help to strengthen their body. So we talked about all of those things. And but then after we came out of there, someone with a little quiet voice and pointing at the same time said, "Oh, is that the birdhouse that was talked about in the book?" And of course, there it is. But what was but Dr. Angela, what was so important about this was the fact is that the birds obliged us on that day to come and to sit upon the bird cage, and voila. Then someone said, hey, then about that time my dog decided to get friendly, my fur baby. He takes and he comes down, and of course one of the guys just fell in love with him. But then, of course, after he loved them a little bit and everything, and the next thing we knew, we decided we had to go to one of my passions, which is the compost garden. They didn't want to miss that for nothing in the world. So as we passed the man-made beach, going over to the compost, of course, my fur baby took his favorite position. He loves sitting under the shadow of the umbrella on the beach. Yes, so he goes over there. And, of course, we made fun of that. But we went over to the compost. But inside of the compost, there's a plastic bladder that's there. And, of course, that's where I catch all of the nutrients, the fertilizer, plant fertilizer, in order to be able to put fertilizer on my plants and so forth. But what's so unique about this is that also they make maggots. And so I began to, can you imagine, for the first time that some of the residents began to look at the maggots that I was holding in my hand, they began to touch them, because they had to understand that maggots are really not nasty creatures. They actually are clean. Mm-hmm. Yes, and I began to explain it to them. But it's this kind of thing that I revisit quite often. That reminds me, of everything that God continued to push through me and to reiterate. And not only that, whenever I go to different book signing, and particularly when I'm given an opportunity to speak, and usually it's somewhere along the Palmetto Trail. But through this, it gives me an opportunity to revisit, the memories all over again. How to relive this all over again as I share with new people all over again this journey of the road to prosperity.
I love it. I love it. And sometimes we need to be reminded. Sometimes we need to remember all of the awesome things that we have been through. Or sometimes we even need to be reminded of the near misses. Sometimes of those times where we were about to slip off or do something that we weren't supposed to do. And I don't mean that in a like an illegal way, but sometimes we shouldn't have said that thing, or we almost said it. But by the grace of God, we didn't say it. We were able to bite our tongue. There are so many times that if we sit down and really reflect, you are so right, that we have some shining moments, and we have some moments where it's like, yep, that's a growth moment right there, because I didn't do it, or I did do it, and you can really applaud yourself about that. So many times along the way, people mess up. As I was saying, sometimes you weren't able to catch yourself before you said something or do something. What do you think are some common reasons why people fail or choose to simply just give up altogether?
Mm-hmm. You know, one of the things that we hear a lot, and for certain, my life has been this way. And I oftentimes would make reference. I say, you know, if I had to compare myself to one biblical character, you know, it has to be King David. Not that I look at myself as a king, but the fact of the matter is that one thing about David, he constantly stepped on it. He made mistakes after mistakes. But what he had that was very important, he recognized, was that he was a man after God's own heart. And through that, I walk away from this with this understanding. You know, the only mistakes that we really make are the ones that we don't learn from, and we allow them to capture us over and over again. Mm-hmm. And so when I look at my life, I realize that I made a lot of mistakes along the way. But yet, in making those mistakes, I'm so thankful that I can look back at those mistakes now and see how God was working me through those in order so that I'll be more stronger the next time, the next challenge. And even though if I fall to something in my life, yet I don't have to stay there, because I know that I have a Savior who has really gone before me. He's still there with me, and he's there to pick me up and guide me on, and even around some of the pitfalls of life. And I'm so thankful for that he has definitely, you know, turned a lot of my mistakes that could have been tragic. He has turned them to win-win situations for me. And I know it's not what I did, but because of what he done for me.
Amen to that. Amen to that. I tell you, it is amazing what God can do. I love it. I love it.
Yes.
Now, it is almost time for us to go to break. And if you could, please, Jerry, can you remind everyone what is the title of your book and where can we pick up a copy?
Yes. The title of the book is The Road to Prosperity. And, of course, the publisher is Eglibris. You can reach that on Eglibris on Eglibris.com. And, of course, the book is on demand at Amazon. And, of course, you might be able to find some in some of the Amazon stores in South Carolina or some of the local bookstores in South Carolina. Thank you.
All right. No problem. Thank you, listeners. We'll be back right after this.
Hi everyone, Dr. Angela here. Did you know that Daily Spark is now on Facebook? That's right, you can visit with me at facebook.com/Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I want to know more about what you're thinking. I'd love to know, which interview did you find the most entertaining or the most informative? I want to talk to you, and I want you to be able to talk to me. Simply visit facebook.com/Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butts-Chester. My guest today is author Jerry Lane, and we're talking about his book, The Road to Prosperity. Now, of course, you can pick up a copy on Amazon and where books are sold. So, Jerry, I want to ask you this question, and that is, we see all of these books in all of the various bookstores. What makes your book so different than everyone else's?
When you look at the title of the book, The Road to Prosperity, that's something that just jumped right out at you. And then the first thing that probably comes to your mind is that, this right here probably one of the things that's going to help me to get my beat on life, to help be successful, making all the money, enjoying all the fine things, and all these other good things that come to mind when you think about, prosperity. But when you look at this book, you open it up, you begin to read, and now you begin to read about various organizations, various groups of people, such as the at-risk community children that's sponsored by the Show Them We Care Foundation, and how the various activities that they enjoy, that instead of just being part of the at-risk community, they are able to go outside of that environment and look and experience how other people live and how the world, look at a different light, a different way. They begin to go out, even in tough, rigid environments, such as trekking up Table Rock Mountain, and how it has to be organized in such a way that because of the long journey, it's certainly the most strenuous mountain probably in South Carolina. But in order to be able to get the food and the drinks and the snacks and everything, they have to trek everything up this mountain, which means that they can do it two ways. They can track everything up and track everything down. But instead of tracking everything up, I did it in such a way where everyone joined in, and we all, as we took breaks along the way, and each time that we took a break, and they ate snacks and they drank water and other sports drinks, they found out that the lighter the load became. So when we got to the top of the mountain, we virtually had hardly anything left. But it's the process. So they begin to learn other values and things of that nature about how to be able to succeed in life. Life is based that way. Is that the more that we involve ourselves, the more that we gain, the more knowledge that we gain, the more experience that we gain, the more that we find out that it makes life a little bit better.
Right.
And that's what it's about, so unique about this book. It's a book not about power, prestige, not money, but it's a book about how to be able to take advantage of what God has already given us. And through it, we are able to gain a greater, a stronger, a more wonderful relationship with our Creator. And then we are also able to serve one another as we take on this walk of life.
I love that. We're also able to serve one another. That is awesome. That is a powerful statement unto itself. I love that. Now, with so much going on in the world, and I know that my authors are usually so busy, and you guys have book signings that you do, and talk shows that you do, radio shows like this one that you have to do. What are some events that are coming up, or some things that you have coming up in your near future?
In my near future, I just want to say briefly is that I just finished up a book signing in Newberry, South Carolina at their Oktoberfest. And what a great time. Just want to give a shout out to the people there in Newberry, South Carolina. How about that? And also, I'm so thankful also for having my family members to come up from Georgia and some from parts of South Carolina, and of course my daughter and my grandson and so forth to be able to join me. And we had such a great time, help setting up and help breaking things down and also enjoying all the festivities there. But along with that, of course, one of the things that I have going is ongoing with the military community, because I am retired military. So it's a wonder to be able to reconnect with them and go to the various military installations and also interact with them. And so I have quite a few of those coming up. But the idea of it is that moving ahead, because I have two other books in the process, not only in the manuscript, but one is ready to be on the print. And the title of that book, I'm sorry to make mention of it this time, but the title of that book is Discovering Prosperity. So now we are not on the road to prosperity, but now we are in prosperity. And the next book is Good Juju. Now, with those three books, I'm looking at on the road RV campaign, fun and book signings, and along the way at various historical places and that kind of thing. So we are excited about that. And also going home back to Georgia and allowing the local boy that from little small town Georgia to be able to get there and do some things there in the local community as well.
I love it. I love it. That is awesome. Well, Jerry, thank you so much for spending time with me here today on Daily Walk with Dr. Angela. I have truly enjoyed my time with you today, and I think our listeners have as well. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and we wish you nothing but safe travels along the way.
Thank you, Dr. Angela, for this occasion. Thank you. Thank you.
And listeners, thank you as well for tuning in. We hope that we have inspired you, we have enlightened you, and we have empowered you to become your best self. Well, as always, may the Lord continue to shine His face upon you. May you receive His grace and His mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, be blessed in the Lord. Bye-bye.